The gavel hadn't struck yet, but in another part of the city, the sound of ticking clocks filled a glass penthouse. Leonard Drayton, billionaire magnate, sat in silence before a wall of windows. Below him, the city pulsed with neon and noise, yet inside his high-rise fortress, the air felt heavy, lifeless. The floor-to-ceiling glass reflected his sharp suit and perfectly combed silver-streaked hair, but if anyone looked close enough, they'd see the hollowness in his eyes. He tapped his pen against the mahogany desk, a steady, agitated rhythm. He owned skyscrapers, banks, and fleets of cars, but not a single person had called him that morning simply to ask, "How are you?" Business partners called for profit. Assistants for schedules. Lawyers for strategy. But never for him. When the intercom buzzed, his assistant's clipped voice announced, "Mr. Drayton, your car is ready. The hearing is in an hour." "Fine," Leonard muttered. His voice was deep, commanding, but inside it trembled. The hearing was routine business, just another legal maneuver. At least, that's what he told himself. He grabbed his coat, passing by a painting, one she had chosen years ago. He caught himself staring at it. "Don't think of her now." He shook his head, as though banishing the thought, and strode toward the elevator. Across the city, in a quiet, sunlit kitchen, Amelia Hart set down her cup of tea. Her home was nothing like Leonard's glass fortress. It was small, modest, filled with plants that climbed toward the windows and the faint smell of lavender that lingered in the curtains. On the fridge, children's drawings, her niece's, were held up with magnets. Every corner whispered of warmth, though the silence still hurt her sometimes. Amelia brushed a strand of chestnut hair from her face and adjusted her simple navy dress. She had chosen carefully. Today wasn't just another court session, it was one she couldn't avoid. She told herself she was ready, but the memory of betrayal had a way of tightening her chest when she least expected it. Her reflection in the hallway mirror stared back at her. The woman looking back was graceful, composed, but in her eyes flickered something fragile. She touched the silver locket around her neck, her fingers lingering as if drawing strength. The sound of a car horn outside broke her trance. Amelia exhaled deeply. "You're stronger now," she whispered to herself. With her bag in hand, she left for the courthouse. Leonard's limousine pulled into the courthouse at the same time Amelia arrived on foot. Neither saw the other yet, but fate was closing the gap. Inside, the courthouse buzzed with restrained energy, lawyers in dark suits, papers shuffling, the echo of footsteps on polished floors. Leonard entered through one set of doors, trailed by assistants and guards. Heads turned, his reputation preceded him everywhere. He smoothed his tie, projecting dominance, though his jaw clenched as if bracing for battle. Amelia stepped in through another entrance. She walked alone, head held high. Some recognized her from whispers of the past, the wife he had left behind in pursuit of power. But unlike Leonard, she carried no entourage, no armor. Only quiet strength. For a fleeting moment, their paths nearly crossed in the marble corridor outside the courtroom. Leonard paused, feeling something stir, though he didn't yet see her. Amelia froze when she noticed the shadow of his figure down the hall. Her heart pounded. After all these years. But she forced herself to move, heels clicking steadily. She wouldn't let him see her falter. Leonard, distracted by his lawyer's murmurs, didn't look up. He adjusted his cufflinks, his mind elsewhere. The tension hummed in the space between them like an invisible thread. Inside the courtroom, the air was cooler, heavier. The judge had not yet entered, but the seats filled with murmurs of anticipation. Leonard sat near the front, his lawyer flipping through files. He scanned the room indifferent, until his gaze snagged on a familiar silhouette at the far side. Amelia. Even from behind, he knew it was her, the way she held her shoulders, the calm poise in her stillness. For the first time in years, Leonard Drayton's hand trembled. He looked away quickly, telling himself it didn't matter, that she was just another face in the crowd. But deep down, the air had shifted. Something inevitable was about to happen. And he knew, this hearing would be unlike any other. If you were Amelia, standing in a courtroom knowing you'd soon face the one who abandoned you, would you meet his eyes with anger, with dignity, or with indifference? Comment below. Hey lovelies, if you're loving this story, be sure to subscribe and share where you're watching from in the comments. I've got another amazing story lined up for tomorrow, and you won't want to miss it. See you back here tomorrow. The bailiff's voice rang out, deep and formal. All rise. The shuffle of bodies filled the courtroom as every head turned toward the entrance. The heavy wooden doors creaked open, and silence fell like a sudden storm. Leonard Drayton stood with the rest, his eyes fixed forward. He had been in countless hearings, each one a blur of monotony, but this time, something in the air pressed down against his chest. And then he saw her. Amelia. His ex-wife walked gracefully to her seat, head held high, every step echoing like a hammer inside his skull. She wore that navy dress, modest yet commanding, and for one unbearable moment, Leonard forgot to breathe. It had been more than a decade. Time had touched her, but not cruelly. She was more beautiful than memory allowed, her strength carved sharper, her dignity radiating in a way that mocked his emptiness. His throat went dry. He clutched the edge of the bench, his knuckles whitening. Why is she here? Why now? But before he could fully process the blow of seeing her, another entered. The judge. A man, no older than 32, stepped up to the bench. He moved with measured confidence, robe swaying, gavel in hand. His eyes scanned the room with authority beyond his years. And Leonard froze. It was like staring into a mirror of his own youth. The judge's jawline, the piercing eyes, even the curve of his mouth, it was uncanny. A younger Leonard, standing at the bench, cloaked in power. Leonard's chest constricted. He couldn't stop staring. His mind raced, stumbling between denial and disbelief. The resemblance was too sharp, too deliberate. Whispers rippled through the gallery. People leaned toward one another, murmuring behind hands. Even the lawyers shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension without understanding it. Leonard's lawyer nudged him under the table. "Sir, focus." But Leonard couldn't hear. All sound had dulled, except for the slow pounding drum of his own heart. The judge's eyes flicked toward him. Just for a second. And in that gaze, Leonard felt stripped bare. The young man's stare was calm, composed, but beneath it was something else, something unspoken, unsettling. Then the judge looked toward Amelia. And she looked back. Her expression softened, almost imperceptibly. A glance filled with familiarity. Respect. Perhaps even affection. Leonard's stomach dropped. His hand trembled against the polished wood of the bench. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple, betraying the mask he'd worn for years. The gavel struck once. "Be seated." Everyone obeyed. Leonard sat slowly, still staring, still reeling. He wanted to demand answers, to shout, "Who is he?" But the words jammed in his throat. He had never been silenced like this before, not in boardrooms, not in courts, not in life. But today, he was powerless. The session began. Lawyers droned about contracts and clauses, but Leonard couldn't hear them. Every flicker of Amelia's gaze tore at him. Every word from the judge's mouth reverberated like thunder. When Amelia stood to speak, Leonard's world tilted. Her voice was calm, steady, but he heard the undercurrent of iron. It wasn't the soft warmth he remembered. It was the voice of a woman who had been broken, rebuilt, and emerged stronger. She didn't look at him. Not once. She addressed the judge, the lawyers, the court, but never him. And that wounded him more than hatred ever could. He leaned forward, fingers gripping his knees. "Say something. Look at me. Anything." But she didn't. And the judge? The judge regarded her with an attention that felt too personal. Not inappropriate, but layered. Protective. Knowing. The resemblance, the familiarity between them, it gnawed at Leonard's insides like fire. At one point, papers slipped from Amelia's hand. The judge leaned down from the bench, voice softer than before. "Take your time, Ms. Hart." She smiled faintly. A rare, unguarded smile. Leonard's breath hitched. He hadn't seen her smile like that in years, certainly never at him since the day he left. Something cracked inside him. For the first time in decades, Leonard Drayton, the man who controlled everything, felt utterly out of control. By the time the gavel struck to adjourn, Leonard hadn't heard a word of the proceeding. He had been lost, trapped in the storm of his own undoing. As people shuffled out, he remained seated, staring at the polished bench where the judge had stood. His reflection warped in the wood, younger and crueler. And in his mind echoed one unbearable question. What if the resemblance isn't coincidence? The courthouse steps gleamed under the afternoon sun, slick with the footsteps of lawyers, clerks, and clients rushing in every direction. Reporters lingered at the bottom, microphones in hand, waiting for scraps of scandal to chew on. Leonard Drayton moved quickly, ignoring the flashes of cameras. His lawyer trotted beside him, rattling off strategy. "Sir, the hearing resumes next week. We'll need your signature on." "Later," Leonard snapped. His voice cut like glass. He tugged at his cufflinks, his pulse hammering too loudly in his ears. His driver waited at the curb, the black limousine gleaming, but Leonard didn't enter immediately. Instead he paused, his eyes drifting back to the courthouse doors. She was still inside. Amelia. His throat constricted again. The sight of her, alive in his world once more, had shaken something he had spent years burying. And that judge, the younger mirror of himself, it couldn't be real. Coincidence, he told himself. Coincidence. Yet the thought gnawed. Inside, Amelia lingered in a quieter corridor. She had no interest in facing the gauntlet of reporters outside. She leaned against the marble wall, exhaling slowly. Her hands still trembled from the encounter, though she kept them hidden in her coat pockets. She hadn't looked at him once, not directly. She couldn't. Seeing Leonard again had felt like reopening an old wound, and the scar beneath still pulsed with pain. And then there was the judge. She knew the whispers had begun. She could feel the weight of Leonard's stare, even when she refused to meet it. But Amelia had built walls around her heart, and she wasn't about to let them crack, not for him, not now. She straightened her shoulders and walked purposefully toward the side exit. The past was the past. She told herself she wouldn't let it unravel her again. Leonard finally slid into the limousine, though he couldn't rest. The city blurred past the tinted windows, but his mind stayed fixed on two faces, hers and his. The resemblance was too perfect. The judge's eyes, the same steel gray as his own at 30. His posture, his voice. Leonard raked a hand through his hair. "It's impossible. He can't be mine." "Can he?" He laughed under his breath, but it came out hollow bitter. "No. Amelia would have told me. I would have known." Yet doubt lingered, cruel and insistent. That evening, Amelia sat at her kitchen table, the silver locket resting in her palm. She opened it slowly, revealing the faded photograph inside, a younger Leonard, smiling in a rare moment of tenderness. Her eyes burned. She slammed it shut. Why had fate dragged him back into her life now? She had worked so hard to heal, to move forward. And the judge, his presence complicated everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. Saw the hearing on the news. He looked shaken. "Are you okay?" Amelia typed back, "I'm fine." But her hand hovered before pressing send. Because she wasn't fine. She hadn't been fine since the moment their eyes nearly met. Back in his penthouse, Leonard poured himself a drink. The amber liquid swirled in crystal, catching the city's lights. He downed it in one swallow, though it did little to calm the storm inside. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo album. His hand shook as he turned the pages. There she was, Amelia, young and radiant, in moments they had once shared. Vacations. Charity galas. Smiles that seemed foreign now. And then he stopped at a particular photo, Amelia in a hospital room, cradling a child. His jaw tightened. He remembered that day vaguely, the excuses he made, the deals he couldn't postpone, the hours he wasn't there. He slammed the album shut. "No. Don't go there," he muttered. But he already had. The next morning, the newspapers flared with headlines. Drayton faces legal battle, ex-wife present in court. Uncanny resemblance between young judge and tycoon raises questions. Leonard's lawyer stormed into his office, slamming the papers onto his desk. "We need damage control. If this rumor spirals." "Let them talk," Leonard said flatly, though his grip on the paper betrayed him. The lawyer stared at him. "Sir, are you saying?" "I'm saying nothing," Leonard snapped, shoving the paper aside. His chest ached. His empire had weathered scandals before, but this wasn't about headlines. This was about truth. And truth was the one thing he wasn't ready to face. Meanwhile, Amelia sat in the judge's chambers. The young man reviewed files, his brow furrowed in concentration. She watched him quietly, her heart tightening. The way he leaned back in his chair, the way he adjusted his glasses, it was all too familiar. "Judge," she said softly. He looked up, his steel-gray eyes locking on hers. For a moment, Amelia saw not just the judge, but a reflection of someone else. Her lips parted, but she swallowed her words. She couldn't tell him. Not yet. Both of them, Leonard and Amelia, tried to bury their fear beneath pride and silence. But the unspoken truth pressed closer with every hour, and neither denial nor distance could keep it away. If you carried a secret that could either shatter or heal the people you once loved, would you reveal it now, or bury it forever? The courthouse was never quiet for long, but that afternoon a storm had rolled in, slowing the city's rhythm. The echo of rain against the tall windows filled the marble halls with a steady, relentless hum. Leonard had planned to slip away early, to avoid Amelia, to avoid the judge. Yet fate, or perhaps irony, had other plans. "Mr. Drayton, if you'll wait in here," a clerk said, opening the door to a side chamber. Leonard stepped inside, only to stop cold. Amelia was already there. The door clicked shut behind them. For a moment, neither spoke. The room was small, lined with law books, a heavy oak table at its center. The storm outside pressed its voice into the silence. Amelia sat stiffly, her hands folded neatly on the table. She did not look up. Leonard remained standing, his presence filling the room like a shadow. Finally, he broke the silence. "Is this deliberate?" His voice was low, rough. Amelia's eyes flicked to his, sharp. "Not everything revolves around you, Leonard." His lips twitched, part smirk, part wince. "Some things still do, it seems." Her gaze hardened. "Don't flatter yourself." The silence stretched again, thicker this time, until Leonard pulled out a chair and sat across from her. His eyes searched her face, drinking in every line time had carved there. She was older, yes, but stronger. Beautiful in a way that unsettled him. "You've changed," he said quietly. Amelia let out a brittle laugh. "We all have." "Not all of us," he murmured, more to himself than to her. She looked at him then, truly looked, and saw the wear behind his polished exterior, the exhaustion in his eyes, the slump in his shoulders when he thought no one noticed. For a flicker of a second, her heart softened. But she caught herself and straightened. "Why are you even here, Leonard? Surely you could have sent an army of lawyers." He leaned forward. "Because some things I can't delegate." Her jaw tightened. "Like abandoning your wife." The words landed like a slap. Leonard inhaled sharply, his mask cracking for just an instant. Before he could respond, the door creaked open. A clerk peeked in. "Sorry, Judge Marlowe asked me to tell you both to wait here until the rain lightens. It's too heavy for the press to disperse right now." And just like that, the door shut again, locking them in with the storm. Amelia rose, pacing to the window. She watched raindrops race each other down the glass, her reflection faint but visible. Behind her, Leonard sat still, his gaze never leaving her. "You look at me like I'm a ghost," she said softly. "Because you are," he replied. "I buried you years ago. Seeing you again," his voice caught. "It's like the grave never closed." Amelia turned sharply, anger flashing in her eyes. "Don't you dare speak of graves. You're the one who left me to mourn alone." The storm outside cracked with thunder, the sound swallowing the silence that followed. Leonard stood slowly, crossing to the other side of the room. They were close now, closer than either intended. "I regret it," he said, the words grinding out of him like stone. "Every day." Amelia stared at him, disbelief warring with the ache in her chest. She wanted to scoff, to push him away. But his eyes, haunted, desperate, made her falter. "You regret losing me," she said finally. "Not what you did." He flinched, because it was true. The tension pressed heavy, unbearable. Then, in an unexpected crack of lightness, Amelia muttered, "You still wear those ridiculous cufflinks." Leonard glanced down, startled. A laugh, real, unguarded, escaped him. "You bought them." "I know," she said, a ghost of a smile tugging at her lips. For the briefest moment, they weren't enemies. They weren't a billionaire and his ex-wife. They were simply Leonard and Amelia, remembering what once was. But the moment passed as quickly as it came. When the storm finally softened, the clerk returned. "You're free to go now." Leonard and Amelia didn't move. Their eyes were still locked, 1,000 unsaid words trembling in the air between them. At last, Amelia stepped back, breaking the spell. "Good night, Leonard." She left the chamber without waiting for his reply, her footsteps echoing down the hall. Leonard stood alone in the small room, the scent of her perfume lingering like a memory he couldn't shake. He pressed his palm against the table, steadying himself. For the first time in years, the great Leonard Drayton felt powerless. The storm cleared, but inside Leonard's chest, the thunder lingered. He spent the night in his penthouse overlooking the city, lights shimmering across wet streets, a view meant to impress but now hollow. He sat in his leather chair, untouched whiskey in his hand, staring at the rain streaks on the glass. Amelia's face haunted him. Her voice. That look in her eyes when she said, "You left me to mourn alone." Sleep refused him. Instead, memories came. Flashback, 15 years ago. A younger Leonard, still ambitious, still charming. He was at the height of his climb, boardrooms applauding, deals closing. But at home, the warmth was slipping. "Leonard," Amelia had said one night, her hands trembling as she held a small sonogram picture. "We're going to have a baby." For a moment, joy had flickered across his face. Then fear drowned it. "A baby," he repeated, almost coldly. "Amelia, this isn't the time. My investors, this merger, it's everything. You know that." Amelia's smile faltered. "And what about us? What about family?" He had turned away, loosening his tie, choosing silence over comfort. That silence had become a chasm. Leonard blinked back to the present, his throat tight. He whispered to the empty room, "I was afraid." But fear had cost him everything. Meanwhile, Amelia sat in her modest apartment, surrounded by law books and papers. Unlike Leonard's world of glass towers, her space was small, warm, and lived in. On her coffee table lay a single photograph, a young Amelia holding a baby boy, her smile weary but luminous. She traced the boy's face with her fingertip. Judge Marlowe. Their son. But no one, not even Leonard, knew. The next day in court, the tension thickened. Leonard entered, his mask polished again, but his eyes betrayed restless nights. Amelia, calm and poised, sat at the opposing table. And then Judge Ethan Marlowe walked in. 32 years old. Shop suit. Eyes that mirrored Leonard's when he was young, intense, calculating, magnetic. Leonard froze, just for a second, his chest tightening. It wasn't just the resemblance. It was something deeper, something that shook him to his core. Ethan's gaze swept over the room, landing briefly on Leonard, then on Amelia. For a heartbeat, his jaw tightened. Then he carried on, professional and detached. But Amelia saw it. She saw the flicker in Ethan's eyes. She remembered another flicker years ago, when Ethan was 12, asking, "Mom, why don't I have a father like the other kids?" And her answer, "You do. He just chose something else." The trial proceeded with legal technicalities, but none of them mattered compared to the silent war playing out between the three of them. Leonard's mind spun. Who is this judge? Why does he look like me? Amelia's heart raced. Does he know? Can he feel it? Ethan kept his expression unreadable, but his thoughts burned. That man. Is he truly my father? At recess, Leonard cornered Amelia in the hallway. "Tell me the truth," he hissed, his voice low but urgent. "That judge, why does he look like me?" Amelia's face paled, but she kept her composure. "Coincidence. Don't lie to me." His fist slammed the wall beside her, though his voice cracked with desperation, not anger. "Amelia, is he ours?" Her eyes shimmered. For a moment, she nearly broke. Nearly confessed. But then Ethan appeared at the end of the hall, his presence commanding even in silence. He looked at them, suspicion flickering in his eyes, before turning away. Amelia whispered, "Not everything deserves an answer." And she walked off, leaving Leonard trembling with the weight of the truth he could almost touch but not yet hold. That night, Amelia sat alone with her journal, a habit she had kept since youth. She flipped back through old entries. April 3rd, 15 years ago, Leonard left again. He said the deal mattered more. I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent. Maybe silence will keep him here. But I can feel him slipping away. August 19th, Ethan smiled today. He has Leonard's eyes. God help me, I can't let Leonard see him. He'll break us both. Tears dotted the pages. Amelia closed the book, pressing it to her chest. Meanwhile, Leonard dug through old files, photographs, scraps of memory. He found one picture, Amelia at a charity event a year after their separation, holding a boy. The caption had named her simply as Amelia Drayton, philanthropist. Leonard's hand shook as he stared at the child. His child. And for the first time in his empire-building life, Leonard Drayton wept. The following week, the trial dragged on, its edges softened by routine. But outside the rigid lines of the courtroom, life forced its own encounters. On a gray afternoon, Amelia ducked into a small cafe across from the courthouse. She ordered chamomile tea, her comfort for as long as she could remember. The bell above the door chimed a few minutes later, and she felt him before she saw him. Leonard. He hesitated in the doorway, rain flecking his coat. When their eyes met, a question flickered in his. Should I stay, or should I run? To her own surprise, Amelia said, sit down. They sat across from one another, the hum of the cafe and clink of mugs filling the spaces between them. For a long while, neither spoke. Finally, Leonard said, almost boyishly, you still drink chamomile. Amelia arched a brow. You still remember. Some things don't leave you, he admitted, his voice soft. Her lips tightened, not quite a smile, not quite disdain. Pity you didn't remember when it mattered. He flinched, but instead of snapping back, he sighed. I was a coward, Amelia. I thought success would fill the void, but it only made it deeper. She studied him, the confession landing heavier than she expected. She had waited years to hear those words. Now that they had come, they felt both healing and hollow. The cafe door opened again, and with it came Ethan. He spotted them instantly. For a second, he froze, his jaw tight, then he strode over. Mother, he said evenly, though his eyes flicked to Leonard with sharp suspicion. I didn't expect to see you here. Amelia straightened. Ethan. We were just talking. Leonard rose halfway, unsure whether to extend his hand. Judge Marlowe. Ethan's eyes narrowed. He ignored the gesture, sliding into the seat beside Amelia. Strange company. Leonard's chest tightened, but he forced calm. Sometimes strange company is the only honest kind. Their gazes locked, father and son, though neither dared speak it. The resemblance was uncanny, undeniable, yet wrapped in unspoken tension. The waitress brought Ethan a coffee. He took a sip, then asked, Mother, will you be home later? I wanted to bring you those case files. Amelia nodded, grateful for the ordinary excuse. Yes, dear. Leonard's eyes softened at the word dear. It rolled so naturally, a glimpse of the bond he had forfeited. Ethan caught the look and bristled. Do you always stare at people like you own them? Leonard blinked, caught off guard. No, he said slowly. Only at the things I've lost. The words hung in the air, heavy and raw. Amelia's eyes shimmered, though she quickly looked away. Ethan clenched his jaw, confusion flickering beneath his irritation. Later that evening, Amelia walked home through quiet streets, carrying groceries. The bags were heavier than she expected, and midway up the stairs to her apartment, she faltered. Here. A hand reached out, steadying her. Leonard. He took the bags without asking, climbing the stairs with her. She tried to protest, but the sight of him in her narrow, lived-in hallway, the same man who had once filled mansions, was disarming. Inside, he set the bags on her counter. He looked around at the modest apartment, books piled high, photographs of Ethan on the shelves. No trace of him. Not one. You erased me, he murmured. Amelia's voice was quiet, steady. I had to. He nodded, accepting the truth like a wound. You did well. He gestured to the photos. He's extraordinary. Her breath caught. Don't. But her eyes betrayed pride, pride she couldn't hide. Leonard's chest tightened. I wish I'd been there. The silence stretched, thick with decades of absence. Then Amelia whispered, so do I. For a moment, the years between them seemed to dissolve. He reached for her hand, hesitant, and to his surprise, she didn't pull away. Her fingers were warm, fragile, familiar. For the first time in 15 years, their skin touched. Her voice trembled. Why now, Leonard? Why after all this time? He swallowed hard. Because I saw you, and I remembered what it felt like to be alive. Her tears broke free then, hot and unrelenting. And when she wept, he didn't let go. The door opened suddenly, and Ethan entered. He froze at the sight, his mother in tears, Leonard holding her hand. The air snapped taut. What is going on here? Ethan demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. Amelia pulled back quickly, wiping her eyes. Ethan. Leonard stood, facing him. We were just talking. Ethan's eyes flickered between them. His chest rose and fell sharply. Talking. Right. He turned to his mother. You deserve better than him. And with that, he stormed into the other room, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. Amelia pressed her palms to her face, her shoulders shaking. He'll hate me for this. Leonard, heart-pounding, whispered, or maybe, he already knows. The next morning, the courthouse was a battlefield cloaked in silence. No storm outside, no thunder in the sky, just a heavier, sharper storm inside three hearts that could no longer avoid each other. Judge Ethan Marlowe sat poised on the bench, his expression harder than usual. The gavel's echo seemed sharper, final, cutting the air like a blade. Leonard sat at the defense table, posture rigid, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept stealing glances at Ethan, his son though unacknowledged, and at Amelia, who sat across the aisle, her jaw set in a mask of calm. The pretense was collapsing. During recess, Leonard followed Amelia into the hallway. You can't keep hiding it, he whispered urgently. Amelia whirled on him. This is neither the time nor the place. Her eyes were fierce, but her voice trembled. She knew the truth clawed at the edges now. I deserve to know, Leonard pressed. He deserves to know. Amelia's hands clenched. And what would you do, Leonard? Parade him around like another trophy? A billionaire's son who never needed you until now. Her words sliced through him. He recoiled as if struck. I would love him, he said hoarsely. Even if it's too late. Even if he hates me. Love. Amelia's laugh was bitter, hollow. You didn't love us when it mattered. The venom in her tone cracked something in him. He grabbed her arm, not harshly, but with desperation. Tell me he's not mine, Amelia. Look me in the eyes and tell me. Her lips parted, but before she could speak, Ethan appeared behind them. What the hell is going on? His voice thundered louder than any gavel. Both Leonard and Amelia froze. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes sharp, demanding. Why do you two whisper like conspirators every time I enter the room? What are you hiding from me? Amelia's face drained of color. Ethan, please. No, he snapped. His composure cracked, and the controlled judge was gone. He was a son, confused, furious, trembling. Tell me the truth. Now. The hallway went silent except for the pounding of three hearts. Leonard's breath caught. He knew this was the moment. The moment everything could burn. He's my son, Leonard said, voice breaking. The words exploded like glass shattering. Ethan staggered back, his face contorting in disbelief. No. No. That's impossible. Amelia reached for him, tears flooding her eyes. Ethan, please listen. Listen. His laugh was sharp, broken. You lied to me my entire life. His gaze darted between them, burning with betrayal. All those nights I asked you about my father, all those years I wondered. He stopped, his voice cracking. And you let me believe he was nothing. Dead. Gone. But he was here. Alive. Rich. Powerful. Choosing everything but me. Leonard stepped forward, his hands trembling. Ethan, I didn't know. If I had. If you had. Ethan's voice rose, raw and cutting. If you had known, you would have what? Put me in a suit, stuck me in some prep school, paraded me at your corporate dinners like an heir. Leonard's chest heaved. I would have tried. Ethan's eyes blazed. But you didn't. You abandoned me before I was even born. The words landed like a final blow. Amelia covered her mouth, sobbing openly now. I was trying to protect you both, she whispered. Protect me. Ethan turned on her, his face twisted with grief. You protected me with lies. You stole my choice. You let me grow up half a man, always wondering why I wasn't enough to be loved by my father. Her tears spilled faster, each one cutting deeper. I thought I was sparing you the pain. You gave me a lifetime of it, he said, his voice breaking at last. And with that, Ethan turned, storming down the hall, his footsteps echoing like thunder. Leonard moved to follow, but Amelia caught his arm. Let him go. Her voice was ragged, broken. Leonard shook her off, his eyes burning. You don't get to tell me that anymore. She flinched as though struck, and for the first time, Leonard walked away from her instead of the other way around. That night, Leonard sat alone in his penthouse, staring at a photograph of himself as a young man. He saw Ethan in every line, every angle, every haunted expression. I failed you, he whispered into the empty room. His voice cracked. God, I failed you both. At the same time, Amelia sat in her apartment, clutching her journal. She wrote through her tears. Today, the truth came out. And I lost both of them. She pressed the pen down until the paper tore. Ethan, meanwhile, sat in his chambers, his robe discarded, his hands shaking. He looked at his reflection in the dark window and saw Leonard's face staring back at him. Is this who I am? He whispered. Am I him? For the first time in his adult life, the man who commanded respect in every courtroom felt like a child again, angry, lost, unwanted. The courthouse was quieter the next day, yet the silence inside was far heavier than the echo of footsteps. The scandal of truth, though whispered behind closed doors, lingered in the air between the three of them. Leonard sat in his office high above the city, blinds drawn, his empire humming without him. For once, the numbers and deals meant nothing. He stared at a single sheet of paper on his desk, an old photograph he had dug from the archives. Amelia, radiant, with a newborn in her arms. The boy's features blurred with time, but the eyes, his eyes, pierced through. Leonard clenched the picture until it crumpled. His empire, his power, his pride, none of it had mattered. He had built towers but left his foundation hollow. His choice loomed before him now, remain a coward cloaked in wealth, or strip himself bare and risk rejection for the chance at love. Across town, Amelia sat at her kitchen table, journal open but untouched. Her tea had gone cold. The echo of Ethan's words replayed endlessly, you gave me a lifetime of pain. Her pen trembled in her hand. What if he never forgives me? She wrote. What if I destroyed him by trying to save him? A sob shook her shoulders. She had carried the burden of protection for so long, she didn't know how to set it down. She loved her son fiercely, but the truth had poisoned the very bond she meant to preserve. Amelia closed the journal, tears slipping onto the cover. She whispered to the quiet room, what do I choose, his forgiveness or my silence? And Ethan, alone in his chambers, robe discarded, paced like a caged lion. His reflection in the window stared back with Leonard's face. He hated it. He hated the resemblance, the reminder, the truth. But beneath the hatred, something deeper throbbed, longing. He remembered childhood nights lying awake, inventing stories of who his father might be, a soldier, a traveler, a hero. Never once had he imagined a man of wealth who had chosen absence over presence. And yet, here Leonard was, broken, desperate, claiming regret. Ethan slammed his fist against the desk. Where was regret when I needed him? He spat. But his voice cracked on the last word. For the first time in years, Ethan felt not just anger, but grief. That night, Leonard stood at Amelia's door. He had no plan, no speech, only the crumpled photograph in his hand. He knocked, each rap of his knuckles loud against the fragile quiet. The door opened slowly. Amelia's eyes widened, then softened with exhaustion. What are you doing here? She whispered. Leonard held up the photograph, his voice unsteady. I should have been there. Tears shimmered in Amelia's eyes. It's too late. Maybe, he admitted. But if there's even the smallest chance, Amelia, I want to try. I don't care about the trial, the money, the past. I care about you. About him. About us. Her breath caught. She wanted to believe him, but 15 years of scars weren't healed by one night of regret. Still, his eyes held no arrogance this time. Only rawness. Only truth. She stepped back, allowing him inside. They sat on the couch, silent, stretching. Finally, Amelia whispered, "He may never forgive us." Leonard nodded slowly. "Then we'll keep showing up until he does. Or until he doesn't. But we'll try." Amelia studied him, and for the first time, she believed him. Meanwhile, Ethan sat in his chambers long after everyone else had gone. His gavel lay on the desk, useless outside of law. He stared at it, the symbol of judgment, and wondered if he could extend mercy to those who had failed him. The door creaked open. Amelia stepped inside, Leonard behind her. Ethan's chest tightened. "I don't want to see you right now," he muttered, turning away. Leonard stepped forward, voice rough. "I know. And I don't deserve to be seen. But I need to say this." Ethan's shoulders stiffened. Leonard continued. "I was afraid. Afraid of being a father, of failing, of giving more than I could. So I chose the coward's path. And I hurt you both in ways I can't undo. But Ethan, if you'll let me, I want to try to know you. Not as a billionaire. Not as some title. Just as a man who's finally ready to be a father." The words hung in the air, fragile as glass. Ethan turned, eyes blazing. "Do you think one apology erases 30 years? No, Leonard said firmly. It's not enough. But it's a start." Silence fell. Amelia's tears glistened in the low light. Leonard's hand trembled at his side. Ethan's jaw clenched. The choice weighed heavy, anger or forgiveness, rejection or vulnerability. Finally, Ethan spoke, voice breaking. "If I let you in, you can't leave again. Do you hear me? You walk away a second time, and I'll never recover." Leonard's eyes burned. He stepped closer. "I swear on everything I am, I won't leave again." The words cracked something open. Ethan's chest heaved. His fists clenched. And then, with a shuddering breath, he whispered, "Don't make me regret this." The courthouse felt different that morning, lighter, though the trial still loomed. Word of the shocking revelation had not yet spread. It remained locked within the walls of family. But for Leonard, Amelia, and Ethan, the air carried the weight of decisions made and promises trembling on the edge of fulfillment. Ethan sat on the bench, robe draped around his shoulders, gavel resting in his hand. But his mind wasn't on the case docket. His eyes wandered to where his mother sat quietly, her gaze steady but soft. And then to the man across the aisle, the billionaire he despised, but who now looked less like a stranger and more like a broken mirror of himself. The session opened, motions were argued, witnesses sworn in, but every word was background noise. For Ethan, it was no longer about the trial, but about the unspoken trial of the heart. When recess was called, Leonard rose, his hand steady but his pulse racing. He crossed to Ethan's chambers, Amelia following. Inside, the three of them faced one another once more. Ethan leaned back in his chair, mask of composure slipping only slightly. "Why are you here again?" Leonard's voice was low but certain. "Because I need you to hear me. One last time." Ethan narrowed his eyes, but he didn't dismiss him. Leonard continued, "I can't erase the past. I can't undo the years I stole from you. But I can promise you this, whatever years are left, they're yours. I want to know your story. I want to earn your trust, not as a billionaire, not as a man chasing redemption, but as your father." Amelia's hand trembled as she reached for her son. "And I want to earn your forgiveness too. I thought I was shielding you. But I see now that I only robbed you of the truth." Her tears glistened. "I don't ask you to forget. Only to let me prove I can still be the mother you need." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight. He wanted to push them away, to shield the fragile child inside from more betrayal. But the ache of longing pulled stronger. His voice was unsteady. "Do you know what it's like to walk into every success and still feel unwanted? To win cases, earn respect, command a courtroom, yet go home and wonder why your father never came back?" Leonard's eyes brimmed. "I do now. And it kills me, Ethan. Every day I'll carry that. But let me carry it with you, not against you." The silence stretched, thick and trembling. Finally, Ethan rose from his chair, eyes glassy, fists trembling. He walked slowly toward Leonard. "You look like me," Ethan whispered. "Every time I see you, I see what I could have had, what I could have been." Leonard's breath hitched. "Or what you can still have." Ethan stood inches away now, tears spilling despite himself. And then, with a shuddering breath, he did the unthinkable. He let his arms fall open. Leonard froze. For a moment, he thought it was a dream. Then he stepped forward, closing the distance, pulling his son into an embrace 3 decades overdue. Ethan's body shook as he clung to him, the years of rage and grief melting into sobs. Leonard held him tighter, whispering again and again, "I'm here. I'm here now." Amelia pressed her hands to her mouth, sobbing silently as she watched the 2 men she loved finally collapse into one another's arms. That night, they met not in courtrooms or penthouses, but at Amelia's modest apartment. The dinner table was crowded with mismatched plates and simple food. Ethan sat at one end, Leonard at the other, Amelia between them. For the first time in years, laughter cracked the walls, tentative, fragile but real. Ethan teased Leonard for burning the garlic bread. Leonard teased back about Ethan's rigid habits. Amelia watched, heart swelling, the sound of her family echoing in the small room. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't healed. But it was beginning. In the weeks that followed, the case resolved, the spotlight shifted, and the scandal that might have broken them was instead overshadowed by something greater: reconciliation. Leonard stepped back from his empire, letting others run what no longer mattered most. He spent mornings with Amelia, evenings learning Ethan's world, not through wealth, but through presence. Ethan, though still guarded, allowed the walls to lower little by little. He let Leonard attend one of his hearings, let him sit in the gallery quietly proud. He didn't call him Dad yet, but sometimes when his voice softened, it felt close. Amelia journaled less at night now. Not because she had nothing to say, but because the words were finally being spoken aloud, to them. One evening, the 3 of them stood together on the courthouse steps. The sun was setting, painting the city in gold. Leonard turned to them, his voice low. "I don't deserve this second chance. But I swear, I'll never waste it." Ethan met his eyes. His jaw tightened, but then he nodded. "You'd better not." And for the first time, there was no bitterness in his tone. Only warning, and beneath it, something softer. Amelia slipped her hand into Leonard's, the gesture small but powerful. Together, the 3 of them walked down the steps, not as strangers bound by pain, but as a family, scarred yet mending, ready to step into whatever came next.
Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. If you know you enjoyed this one, you will surely enjoy the next one. So click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next story. And don't forget to subscribe.